Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Passionate Professional series. My name is Tunde Kukoyi and I'll be your host for tonight's episode. The Passionate Professional series is an offshoot of the Passion and Purpose Hub. It is a channel that shares useful knowledge so you can maximize your passions and your purpose so you can enjoy not just success but also fulfillment in your personal and professional lives. Now, what the Passionate Professional series is all about is shining light on professionals from all across the globe that are not just defining themselves by the status quo, but they're reaching out for their potential. And by so doing, they're making positive changes and making lasting contribution, not only in their lives, but in their workplaces and in the world at large. It is hoped that by shining this light on this passionate professional series from all across the world, when you see them, then it can light up that spark in you as well and get you to shine your own light and also make a positive contribution and make a meaningful difference in the world. As always, this show is all about audience interaction. So thank you to those of you that are watching live and those of you that will be watching the replay. Always remember that it is an interactive session. So always feel free to share your comments, to share your questions, your feedback, and they will pop up on the screen and we'll always address them at different points. I also need to say a massive thank you to you for joining for the previous episodes. This is episode 12 already. That means that this show has been running for 1 year. This would not have been a worthwhile experience without you, the people that are watching and listening and playing the replay as well. Our guest for today is already in the studio, but just before I bring her up, as always, I always like to ask a question as a food for thought. And the question for today for you as a professional is this: do you know your values, or what are your values? You might say, hold on a minute, that is something they always ask us. That is something I only address when it's time for interviews. But no, it shouldn't be so. Your values should be something that you should always hold there in your heart. It should be up on the wall in front of your bathroom, or it's something that if they wake you up in the middle of the night, you're able to tell us what your values are. And you might say, what are values? Values are internalized principles that guide your thoughts, your actions, and your behaviors. And the reason why you need to know what your values are is because when you know what your values are, it improves and it boosts your self esteem and your self respect. It helps you to make better decisions. And when you know what your values are, it helps people interact with you better. For example, if you knew that your value, for example, was something like well being, um, people at work will find it hard to come to you by pushing extra work to you, even at the with the temptation of extra pay, because they know that you prioritize your well-being over money. So for me, for example, I know what my values are. They are responsibility, relationships, well-being, service, and creativity. So it's important for you as well as a professional to find out what your values are. If you do not know what your values are, there are several values-based assessments online, and it's all a matter of prioritization because there's like hundreds or probably thousands of values, but it's choosing what is really important to you, and that is very, very important. Our guest for today is someone that has clearly defined her values, and she always talks about and she lives out her values, and that has helped her project not just personally but also professionally. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our guest for today because she's already in the studio. Okay, so our guest for today is Khady Gaye. So she's truly a citizen of the world. She was born and raised in Belgium, in Ghent. I hope I pronounced that right. However, her roots are Senegalese. She's currently based in Chicago as a manager and HR manager at the United Airlines headquarters. Educational background is in translation and human resource management. She started her career in a more localized HR setting. She's enlarged her portfolio globally and she has held many different positions along the way. As a leader, she aims to connect with others through candid conversations, curiosity, and authenticity. She adopts a Theranga mindset in everything she does. This loosely means that You need to include the elements of respect, community, solidarity, and sharing in your interaction with people to create that welcoming feeling. Diversity and inclusion are in her DNA. She's traveled extensively in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and more, and she gets her energy from people. Described as a natural relationship builder, she thrives by empowering people to be proud of who they are, and her mantra is inclusion is the solution to exclusion. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome to the virtual stage, Khady Gaye. Hi, Khady. How are you today?
I'm good. Hi, Tunde. Thanks for the invite. I'm doing fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can see people are already sending um, greetings as well. There's Mike, there's Lenje Deliwi, and you're saying good afternoon. Sorry, pardon me, I said good evening because it's evening in my time zone, but thank you all for coming on the show already. So, Kadi, how are you doing today? Tell us about how your day has been, how your weekend has been. It's good to have you on board.
Well, my weekend is going well so far. I enjoy life. I enjoy the weekend. And I wanted to say thank you for inviting me on this session. And maybe for the audience, it's interesting to share how you and I met. I think it was probably last year with the
Yeah.
mastermind class of John Maxwell and the importance of networking, even virtually. I met you together with Heidi and Leslie, and we had a couple of weeks together where we were talking about leadership. And I met you thanks to another friend who connected me with Heidi. So when you were presenting who I am, really when it comes to naturally building the relationship with people, that's what it is about when it comes to networking. I don't see networking as like, just exchanging of business cards. It's more the networking of building meaningful connections with people. And I'm so glad that we are still in touch. So thanks for the invite.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kadi. Thanks for that reminder of how we met. And obviously, I can never forget you because just like you said, it wasn't just about, oh, let's do this mastermind and it's business for the day. But during those weeks that we worked together, we actually connected as people. And just reading a book, which you probably know, it's called Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And in that book, she just kept repeating that people will always be people. And we need to understand that even when we go to networking events, we're always just keen to just get cards, just like you said, but we always need to put it at the back of our minds that people will always be people. So thank you for sharing that. And that's a good way to start our session for today. So for people that, I know I've read out your bio, but for people, some people might just say, okay, yeah, you work at HR, you work in HR, sorry, you're from Belgium, but tell us a bit more about yourself, some interesting facts about yourself. Someone is already saying that you're not just an amazing, you're not just a passionate professional, you're also an amazing friend. So tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, so you want the long story or the short one?
Whichever one.
So if I really have to share who I am in a nutshell, I would say that first of all, I'm a human being. I'm a mom of two daughters. I'm the spouse of a wonderful husband who is supporting me in my journey. I'm the eldest of five, but we are eight. I have eight siblings, brothers and sisters. And I'm the friend of many. And I do have an extended family all over the world. I describe myself as a citizen of the world. And, with your series, The Passionate Professional, I'm clearly a passionate person. But, passion only is not enough. We have passionate people all around the world. It's if you combine passion and purpose, that makes it more meaningful and more powerful. So I'm definitely a people person. I like to connect people. I like to bring people together. When people ask me, "Oh, you have an accent," I tell them I'm multilingual, and I can think and dream in different languages. So that's a fun fact about me.
Wow. Yeah, I saw down your status that you can actually speak five languages, and that is really impressive. I'm going to try to name them: English, French, German, Dutch, and Portuguese.
Yeah,
That's remarkable.
Portuguese is really at the lower end right
Yeah.
now. But I learned Portuguese because in my previous company, we had an office in Angola, and the local people, even if they were working for an American company, they were mainly talking Portuguese, and it was the first time they ever had someone from HR visiting them, and I found it just out of respect. I told like I'm gonna learn the language so that we can communicate together. Why should they majority make an effort for me to speak in English? Well, actually, I should make the effort to learn the language. So that's how I decided to learn Portuguese. And apparently, I quickly adopted the Brazilian accent because my
Mhm.
teacher was from Brazil. And the way that she was explaining about the country and the culture, guess what? I have Brazil on my list to travel because I'm so connected with that country and I never been there. So there is something with that country that attracts me and that reminds me about my African roots that I have to go there at some point. I don't know when, but it's on my list.
Wow. I'm sure you probably are losing count of the number of countries that you visited. We'll talk about that in a bit. But just coming from what you said, and I've already adopted something from what you said. You said passion is not enough. It's when you combine passion with purpose, that's when it makes a difference. So tell us, if you would, some things that you're passionate about or what you describe as your purpose, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, so for me, I have a passion for people and I'm curious about people. I born and raised in a country that was not necessarily very diverse or multicultural at that time. So that's how I developed my curiosity for people. And I decided at very young age that I would never wear the sorry hat, but I would, I would kind of try to understand why people behave a certain way, why people interact or communicate a certain way. And that's how I developed really my passion for people, bringing people together. I would, always like consider myself as the first only different. And instead of like being in that blaming situation, I would rather try to find a way to bring people together. And I've always done that in a natural way. From a professional perspective, I did that too. So I've been working for local companies and then I moved into more international companies. And for international companies, I was fortunate to work for American companies where you would have like the headquarters and then the European headquarters. And I was always curious to say, hey, how can I build a bridge so that we can collaborate in a more inclusive way? So that's really how I developed my passion and my purpose for the human being and making sure that people feel comfortable and be who they want to be and also be part of who they are and help them to shine, thrive, and grow in their journey.
Wow, thank you so much. I've just been writing when you're talking, and I think at some point my internet connection was becoming a bit unstable, so apologies for that. But yeah, what I picked from what you said, you are passionate about people, and you think about how you can build bridges. I mean, in a world where people are building walls, they're trying to separate themselves from each other, trying to isolate themselves. You're building bridges and you're building connections. So I really love that as well. So still about what you're passionate about, linking it, I'm sure you talked about being passionate about people. Then how then does that tie in with your values? Because I've heard you talk about your values before. I would like if you can share with us what your values are. Just like as I started, I talked about the importance of having values. So what are your values and how do you live your values on a daily basis?
To answer that question, I have to go back to my roots. So I always say that I'm not born in Africa, but Africa is born in me. So what I mean by
Mm,
that is that I got values that I inherited from my parents, the way that they educated me. They were very strict, but I'm also now I understand why they were so strict. So I really cherish the values that I got from my parents, which is, you mentioned it earlier, there was a Wolof, that's a dialect in Senegal, where we use the word teranga. And teranga means, it's a combination of hospitality, the way that we welcome people, and the generosity that you have for people. And if I translate that into, let's say, the workplace, me being in HR, and for me, HR is not human resources, but human relations. When we say open door policy, you may have your open door, physically your door is open, but if you don't like have that behavior where people feel comfortable reaching out to you, engaging into conversation with you, that open door policy doesn't mean anything. So for me, the values that I do have and that I try to really translate every day in the way that I interact, collaborate, and communicate with people is authenticity, integrity, compassion, kindness, courage, because we are in a world that is not so easy. Workplace is not so easy either. We can see the good, and bad, and the ugly in people. So you really need to develop those skill set of courage and being bold. And I think once you know who you are, and your values will help you throughout your journey. And I don't make any compromise on my values, for sure.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that. You talked about authenticity, integrity, kindness, and courage. And you summed it up by saying that you don't compromise on your values and your values would help you along the way in life. And I totally agree with that. I've read somewhere that you actually choose your values and then your values actually shape your destiny. And having these values crafted for yourself, it always helps you to make the decisions when you need to make the decisions. And just like you were also saying, you were talking about how you don't see HR as human resources, but rather like human relations. And you talked about having candid conversations. So I have a question for you, if I may, and that is, how do you tie that authenticity, courage, and in making in having candid conversations? Because sometimes it's very difficult to, I don't know if I think it is difficult for me to have some candid conversations with people. Sometimes we call it like difficult conversations or rumbling, but how do you do it yet being kind and using integrity? How do you have those difficult conversations with people?
Yeah, when it comes to authenticity and integrity, is doing the right thing for people. It's about dignity and respect, and we say to you would like to be treated the same way you treat people, the same way you would like to be treated. That only makes sense if you really are conveying, not only conveying that message, but also demonstrating that behavior over and over. So in my case, when it comes to human resources, we are dealing sometimes with difficult, delicate situation, and by being authentic and being honest, that's the most long-term strategy that you can have, because there is this quote from Maya Angelou that says, people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And at the end of the day, it's about how people feel about things. And that's you cannot control how people react, but you can control how you are having that interaction with them. And I think that's really important. And I think throughout the years, I believe, based on the feedback that I received, that I was rather successful in doing that. When you bring people within a company, it's about the values, it's about the culture, but it's equally important when someone is departing the company that this person still feels respected, and not like, oh, well, this person is leaving and we are disengaged. Because this person leaving can become a customer, can become the CEO of a company, and can still, brand your company in one way or another. So I feel it's like you need to be consistent in the way that you are communicating and collaborating and interacting with people. What you see today from me is what you saw yesterday and what you will see tomorrow. So,
Wow. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's consistency. It's not, I mean, being the same person inside and outside, being the same person regardless of the scenario. It's a good thing because when people know that you're consistent, then they can actually trust you and they can actually vouch for you, if I can put it that way. So thank you for sharing those values. The reason why we talk about these values over time is not just so we keep repeating them, but it just helps you see that people do not people do not get to positions where they are significant or where they are regarded as passionate or excellent just by accident. People do not wish themselves into leadership positions. These are some of the foundations, and that's why we keep repeating it. Because if all of these are there as the foundation, then it's only a matter of time before you ascend up to that place. But if the foundation is very shaky, you don't have your values, you don't have good habits, you don't know what you're passionate about, then even if you get to a leadership position, it only takes time before it all crumbles. And that's why we always start with this. So tying to your values, or leading on from your values, can you tell us some of your habits that, apart from values which are like ingrained principles, what are some of the things that you do on a day to day that you feel that are some of the most productive habits that you've inculcated?
That's a good one. I think some of my habits is number one is, when I wake up every day, I know that I have to earn my seat. So I'm challenging myself and continuous learning because we are just the expert of certain topics. We cannot be the expert of everything, which also means that you need to work with people, have that open mindset. The way I reflect on my achievements, and that's part of my habits, is like at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, I'm asking myself what I have achieved for others. It's never about me. When I post on LinkedIn about certain things, it's to inspire people, it's to show up, it's I feel comfortable in doing that because it's never about me. It's about what can I bring in someone's life? How can I impact someone's life? So I would say those are really my initial habits that I can really think of right now.
Excellent. I've picked up three, and one is continuous learning, and I totally agree with that. The moment we stop learning, that is when we stop growing as people, and then we start regressing. And so someone said that, yeah, when we stop learning, we start dying. I totally agree with you. And the other one, you said earning your seat. I've heard you talk about that before. Like you need to continuously earn your seat. So people get to positions and they feel like now it's time to rest on my laurels. But I know you're someone that continuously develops yourself professionally, and you also talked about reflecting on your achievements because many of us have achievements and then we feel like, yes, I did it, I'm super, I'm great. And someone said that is when we are most successful. That's when we are very likely to fail because we just rest on our laurels. But just like you said, you reflect and you find out what I did that got me to this place. What can I do to make it better? And that is something that we need to inculcate as well. It's something that we need to do more often. Reflecting. Someone, John Maxwell said that experience is not the best teacher, but evaluated experience is. So I totally resonate with those things that you shared with us. Thank you. Now, this is something I'm going to ask you, and I always like asking it because I think for me it's encouraging. Sometimes when I ask the question, it gives what I get back, I really don't know how to respond because we are human beings, just like you said, we're all human beings. But is there a challenging time in your life that you're willing to share with us? A difficult time or a challenging time that you once had, and how were you able to navigate it? Because we know that that's where we get encouragement from. Because whether we like it or not, as long as we're all living here on this earth, we'll face challenges at some point. But learning from other people's stories, how they've gone about it, is how we actually learn how to navigate our own challenges as well. So, is there anything that you like to share with us regarding this?
Yeah, you know, people are challenging. So I've been dealing with people for more than 20 years now. Um, and throughout my journey too, I'm coming from a big family, but I've always been seen like a go-to person, so I had a lot of responsibilities on my shoulders. I needed to be led by example, and things like that, being a role model, even if I didn't want to at that time. So I would say maybe two things that I can share that maybe resonate with people or audience. Number one is through my childhood, and I'm still a work in progress, by the way. It's, when you go to school to get educated, right? And my father was not allowed to go to school. So for him, it was extremely important that his kids would go to school and get an educational degree. He would repeatedly say that, get your educational degree. That's really number one priority. I liked to go to school at that time because it was also my only freedom. And during weekend, I would go to the library with books because that was a way for me to escape from home and travel through books. And now, destiny or not, I work in an airline industry where I can travel around the world. So you see destiny. But to get back to that challenge, I was 9 years old, primary school, third primary school. I had a teacher who was who was racist. I didn't knew that he was racist, but it appeared that he was racist. And everything wrong that would happen in the classroom, I was the one to be blamed. He would ask me to come up front, and he had like a metal rule, and I had to show my hand this way, and he would beat me. And he would look me in the eyes and say, "Oh, you don't feel the pain, right, with the color of your skin?" And I remember that at that time, I was resilient enough to not cry in front of my other classmates. And when you have those type of incidents, it can either destroy you or it strengthen you. In my case, it strengthened me, and I decided that I would never ever wear the sorry hat. And that's again part of like me having that ability and that awareness to understand why people behave a certain way, trying to educate him that what he was doing was wrong, and also showing that level of a curiosity that we have much more in common that things that sets us apart. And it happened multiple times. And it was an old building. The school was an old building, and it was in a developed country, Europe, Belgium, right? So he would ask me to go to the roof, and I would have to stand there for hours doing nothing. And me having that passion for inclusion and diversity, at that time I had an ally. She decided to speak up. She had her mother that was working in the kitchen of the school, and she told him like, this needs to stop, or I'm going to tell my mom about it. And eventually he stopped doing that. But this was, I transformed a traumatic event into something, an experience where I could learn from it and grow from it. So it's a lived experience that I share because those are the type of situation that happen. And when it happened, like at 9 years old, you don't know how to react to this. You don't have a toolkit for that, right? So I'm so happy that I was able to deal the way I dealt with it at that time, and I developed, that skill set of being resilient, of being assertive, of showing respect and dignity, regardless of who you are. And this is also what happens at workplace. You have people you have affinity with, and you have people where you just know that you need to remain professional. And that's okay. As long as you have the fundamental essentials of dignity and respect, that should be okay. And it should be a challenge. I think the other challenge for me was I'm the type of person that gives a lot. You give, you give, you give, you give, you give, you give to a certain extent. And when my father passed away back in 2018, that was a trigger for me to realize, okay, what I'm going to do with my life. I've been giving to my family, to friends, to work. Like people ask me, do you sleep? Yes, I do sleep because I'm online all the time. But that's just who I am, right? And I was like, when my father passed away, I decided, like, okay, now it's time for me. I need to put myself first. And even if it's a challenge and it's difficult, I'm now at a place where I can put myself first without feeling guilty. And that's where my journey started. I always had the dream to move to the US since I was 16 years old, and through my company, I had the opportunity to do just that. So I moved from Brussels to Chicago in September 2020. And yeah, I'm just like, living my dream and as I say, my second act. I think you were frozen for like 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, carry on. I was listening.
Okay.
Yeah, these things happen, they get out of our control, and just like you said, there are some things that are out of your control. Yeah, so I think I got lost when you're talking about about how you always had the dream of moving to the United States um, after your father passed away in 2018.
Yeah. As I was saying, this journey now in the US for me is a dream. Has always been a dream to me. And I'm the only one that moved. So as I mentioned earlier, I have two daughters. I have my spouse. They are still in Belgium. I'm the only one that moved to Chicago. But I don't feel guilty about it because we made a family decision. They support me. I have my family supporting me. I have my friends supporting me. And I'm really surrounded by good people that are helping me throughout that journey. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that because I know it's something that is really personal to you. But again, it just shows, it just shines light on how you'd rather be authentic, and authenticity all shines all through you. Yeah, but going back to that story when you were really young at 9 years, I loved how you're able to bring out some lessons in it. One was that when we go through difficult challenges, or when we go to trying times, we can choose to be bitter or we can choose to be better. Um, there's so many people around the world that were in that same is in a similar situation as you, and till today, what they are holding in their hearts is bitterness. But from your own side, you're able to think of how you could make you better. And today, look at where you're working, and you are actually living the opposite of what that teacher was living. You are encouraging inclusion amongst diversity, and that is a great thing. And you also talked about allyship and how someone else was able to speak up for you, and I think that's something that we also need to learn as well. When people are going through challenging times, we should not say it's not happening to me, but we also need to think about how we can come in, how we can help, instead of saying it's not all about me, it's not, it doesn't concern you. We need to think of how we can actually help people going through challenges as well. So thank you for sharing that, as well as your story as well about how you moved to the United States. A lot of people are also, yeah, carry on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. It's. I really learned this from my father because he was like first generation, and I could see in his behavior how he was like bringing people together. Every time there was like an African family that would, settle in the city, he would support them, give them advice on things, etc. So he was already demonstrating that inclusive leadership. And to give you an example is at that time he built a community, and when it comes to the African diaspora, people generally the sad situation of when someone is passing away, they want their human remain to be repatriated to their home country, right? And at that time it was not really well structured, and my father was really the founder of that association, because he would knock on every single door, ask for collecting money to ensure that the family would have sufficient funds to be able to repatriate the human remain of friends or people that he would connect with. And now this association is just getting bigger and bigger, and where people are just like providing annual contribution, and it's like an insurance now. But at that time there was no insurance. He was the one that was really knocking on every single door and bringing people together to say, hey, we need to support, we need to show solidarity. So that's something really that I learned from my father. He would have people that would, live in our house for weeks or even months, and we would offer them everything they needed till they would get in a better place. And when you do things from your heart, everything else just follows. So and that level of generosity
Hmm.
is priceless. So that's why I say, in the professional setting, job title doesn't mean anything if you don't know why and how you should do things.
Wow. I mean, someone from the audience is already saying having a good father in our lives is such a gift. And I'm sure when he started that, he didn't know how far it would go. But just like you said, he started it as just a small association knocking on doors, but it's something that's gone beyond him. And that's another thing that we always need to think about. It's about leaving a legacy in the hearts of people. So thank you for sharing that story and reinforcing it as well. Um, so now that we talked about a challenging time, how about we talk about something that you're proud of, something that one of your greatest achievements, something that you can always look back on and smile. What are some of your greatest achievements?
I'm going to repeat myself. I think the first thing I'm proud of is just being myself, being authentic. Throughout my journey, being my childhood or a professional setting, being like the first, only different all the time. You may have sometimes the tendency to try to fit in the mold, and I quickly understood and realized that I didn't want to fit within. And even when I tried, it didn't work out. So, you need to fit in your shoes because your feet just have a certain size, right?
Hmm.
And clothes also, you can only fit to a certain size because of the morphology that you have. Anything else, you don't need to fit. So when I hear at workplace that people say, oh, you need to fit in what? I got rid of the box many years ago, and that has given me such a level of freedom. It's just indescribable. So that's really, I would say, number one, the achievement of just being myself, and
Hmm.
a human being. You have belonging, right? When you are in a place, sometimes people say, "Where is home for you?" And my answer to that is, I feel home in a place where I feel welcomed, valued, respected, heard, and seen. So I feel home in Chicago, I feel home in Belgium, I feel home everywhere where I get that level of respect and that I feel valued, welcome, respected, heard, and seen. I was like I think October 13, I had one of my other passion is using my voice to spread a message. So I'm also doing speaking engagements to become a global speaker. I was October 13, I was in Paris talking about multiculturalism at work. The level of respect that I received from the audience and from the organizers was overwhelming. I was welcomed like a star. I was treated like a princess. I was respected like a queen. And the feedback that I received from the audience was just priceless. And that's really how I feel and fuel myself with the energy and the connection that I make with people. I surround myself with people that will give me the level of energy that I need. I don't wait for someone to motivate me. I'm motivating myself. So the other achievement is being a mom, being a woman, being a Black leader, because sometimes I go to places where they do not expect me as a Black leader. They think I'm a flight attendant or anything else, but not a Black leader. So that's another achievement for me, because I want to be a role model for my daughters. And I think, based on what they are saying, that they are proud of me. So that's another achievement that, in impossible, there was possible. I always try to challenge the status quo. When someone says, oh,
Hmm.
we've always done it this way. I'm like, no, let's try something different. Because I love change. I like to try things out. And if you fail, that's fine. You learn from it. You either learn or you win. So, and it's important also to share your failures because social media
Mm,
nowadays, people are putting out there what they want. You see the visible part, but we also need to share the invisible part. The struggles that we are going through. I will not lie to you. I had some dark moments. I had moments where I was like, sitting in my living room on my own, crying, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I'm far away from my family. And then the next day, something happens, and I'm like, I know why I'm here. I have a calling, I have a gift. So I'm just going to go for it. And I just don't give up. And I show up every single day, one step at a time.
wow. Well, I love how you started by saying that your greatest achievement is in being yourself. And I totally agree with you. There's everyone in the world, or most people in the world now, are trying to be someone else. They are trying to fit in. Or yeah, having that courage of being able to say that this is who I am, this is what I'm going to be, this is why I stand for. I think it's a very, very, very great achievement. And I love how you said that there are no failures in life, that sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. We don't actually lose if we're able to learn from the mistakes. So I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to
Oh,
ask you
and
then. So, and just before,
maybe,
carry on.
yeah, one more thing is I think the other achievement is when we talk about success. Success, every single person in the world may have his or her own description of what success means. For me, success is not about job titles. Success is for me that I can wake up every day, open my eyes, and that I'm healthy. Success for me is that I can, support people, that I can give back. And that's also why I'm also involved in volunteering engagements with kids because kids are the future. So that's
Yes.
something that I'm also very passionate about. And I'm part of a team, and every year they select one country in Africa where we do like local volunteering engagement. And this team is called We Were Once Them. That was organically created by two friends, colleagues, first officers, Anthony McGee and Jean-Olivier Mbok and other people. And when we do this, every time I have that experience, I come back transformed. Yeah, that's one example. So this one was back in September, the week of my birthday. It was a fabulous week where we visited schools and orphanages, and we all spent time with them to inspire them that they can be what they want to be. And at my age, when I was a child, I didn't really had someone that I can look up to. I didn't have a role model. So it's so important that once you reach a certain level, that you not only make the circle bigger, but you also like open doors. And if the doors are closed, you create the doors for others. This is so important.
Wow.
The
So
world.
it's not just opening doors for others, but also creating doors for others. And I can totally relate to what you said about going to countries in Africa and speaking to children, because I remember when I was young, when I was very, very, very young, I used to just dream about being a pilot for just for reasons that I was very curious about what happens up there in the sky. But I mean, you and the rest of your team coming from Chicago, coming to countries in Africa and showing people that it's not out of reach to them. Someone like you is doing it. I think that's something that will actually motivate them. So thank you for what you're doing. And there was something you shared earlier about you being, I mean, about us being comfortable to share our failures as well, because many people just come up on social media, like you said, and all they want to show is, oh, look at my new house, look at my new job, but it doesn't feel real because we all know as human beings that we're a mixture of strength and weaknesses. We're a mixture of courage and fear. I think that was how Brené Brown puts it in her book. We're a mixture of grace and greed. So we need to, I mean, seeing things like that, seeing people like that, seeing that people are people that are actually authentic. It helps people actually understand and realize that life is not always rosy, but you always need to pick yourself back up again, and you have to keep going. Like life is a journey of ups and downs. And thank you for sharing that, and also thank you for leaving that out as well. A couple of people are saying, they are sharing some comments as well. Being myself is one of my biggest challenges in the world today. But thank you for sharing that. How you are able to be yourself. And Sandra is saying sometimes we worry as parents what we're giving to our kids, but just as you illustrated, the power of an example with your father, that's one of the greatest long-standing gifts. So we also need to be role models for the people in our lives, for children. Just like you said, children are the future. We always need to be positive role models for them. Now, you've already mentioned something about this earlier, but again, I'm just going to ask you, how do you stay inspired? How do you stay motivated? I know you mentioned something about it, but just for the purpose of reinforcing it, how do you stay inspired or motivated?
You know, as I mentioned, I'm not waiting for someone to motivate me. I am motivating myself. The way I do that is really I cultivate a positive mindset. I would rather see the glass half full than half empty. I'm positively realistic because there are things that are happening that are not easy to deal with. So I'm not naive that everything is like pink. However, it's how you decide to react to certain things that will make the difference. I'm very intentional on how I put my time and energy in certain things because as I mentioned, I moved from one country to another. I really had to build my network here. And in order to be inspired and motivated, you really need to have a strong mental because it's not easy. And it's just developing that cultivate that positive mindset. And also, we have a lot of good people around the world that are really keen to help you, to support you, friends, extended family, mentors. So I'm pretty fortunate that I have my good circle of friends that are supporting me in my journey. And I know that I can rely on them when I have my down moments. But generally, I have my up moments. Fun fact about me is that when I listen to music, I love to dance. So if I put music on, that's something that will definitely already help me to relax and see things from a different perspective.
Oh, good. Thank you for sharing that. And you kind of touched on that earlier when you were talking about how before you were just not about giving, but you also realized the importance of self-care. And again, you're talking about it now. Sometimes we just can't do it all by ourselves. We need to rely on friends, we need to rely on allies, colleagues, we need to rely on mentors, and we need to also boost ourselves. Like just like you said, music is positive and uplifting. It can help with our well-being. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That and also always seeing that the glass is half full rather than half empty, having that optimistic mindset, always having hope. That is something that we can always lean on as a means of inspiration and motivation.
I
So
think
just
maybe one more
yeah, go
thing
for it.
is
Yes.
the first thing is probably yourself. Once you know who you are, it makes things easier. And you need to trust your inner voice. You need to listen to your inner voice. You have your inner voice, but you also have the inner voices. The inner voices is what I put into the category of negativity, the
Mm.
noises, right? That will tell you, no, you can't do it, or no, this is not for you. But then you have that inner voice inside you that will help you to shine, thrive, and rise above. Once you listen to that inner voice, it becomes much more easier. But it takes time depending on who you are. For me, it took time, and as I said, I I surrounded myself with the right people. A couple of years ago, I worked with a transformational coach. things like that. So that continuous learning, you don't have to figure it out by yourself. You have people that can help you in that trajectory.
Mm. Yeah, and I love how you share that we should trust the inner voice over the noise, and that's something that many people still have not come to the realization. We fill ourselves with so much noise, and you say you need to know yourself. So is how did you grow yourself to that point that you're able to realize that inner voice separate from the noise? How do you have any specific practices that you do, or do you go somewhere, or do you get a time for a retreat? Just shed some light on that for the benefit of the audience.
I think when I started to start like publishing my posts on LinkedIn, if I look at the first time, my first post and my post now, it's a world of difference. And I remember the first time that my coach said, "Hey, you need to post because you have a gift, you have something to share with the world." I was so nervous. It took me almost like 15 minutes before I pushed on the send button because I was like, okay, how I'm going to deal with the feedback. If I get negative feedback, how I'm going to deal with that. And now I'm posting intentionally, and the feedback that I get is really it's really positive. There was one post, the one where I say that smile is a universal language. I remember that one, I call it like my DEI fingerprint. This one, when I posted it, it took 4 hours before I had more than 10,000 views. And don't quote me on
Wow.
that. I'm not about the number of likes and number of views, but what was really important to me was the feedback that I received and the people that I was able to touch, and also the private messages that I received from people, and how I impacted their life. So
Wow. That's really remarkable. And yeah, just like you said, like your coach told you, I mean, we always wary of feedback, like, oh, what if people don't accept my message? And I still struggle with that a lot as well, like, oh, what if they don't like my message? What if they don't accept my message? But I think something that helped me was when I heard someone say that your message can never be for everyone. I mean, name whoever it is, who do you want to name in the world that has a message that was accepted by everyone? It can never be for everyone. But if it's good enough for one person, then it's worth it. So that's something I always put in my mind when I want to share things. I'm like, what if they don't accept it? I'm like, well, if it's good enough for one person, then it's worth it. So thank you for
mhm,
sharing that as well. Um, we're beginning to get to the end of the 1 hour session. Time always flies by so fast, and we don't even cover all that we think we're going to cover. But as long as we're able to impact lives and we're able to share positive messages, then, like I said, it's good enough. So I'm going to ask you this question because it's something that people sometimes underrate, but I think is also very important, and that is, how do you find the balance between your work life and your personal life? How do you balance work and life as a professional?
um, I'm probably not the best example. First of all, I don't know if there is a balance, because when you use that word balance, it's almost like you need to weigh like how much time do you spend for work, how much time you spend for your personal life, how much time you spend
Hmm.
for your family. One thing I would say is that for me, it's more about like how do you integrate work life.
Hmm.
Family will always come first, because with your family you're another number. So for me, I feel comfortable where I am now, because I know that if something happens, the only concern that I have is that there is a distance. I'm 8 hours away before I can get back home. So that's really my only concern. Other than that, my family know that they can count on me every single time. So family really comes first. And when it comes to like work life integration, I think I make sure that I do things that are supporting my well-being, being work or being life. So I will spend my time and my energy on things and surround myself with people that will support my well-being. I'm fortunate enough that I'm very creative. So when it comes to work, I have my core job, but next to my core job, I'm also a type of person that says yes to a lot of things. And the yes that I say to a lot of things are things that I'm really passionate about. So it's a continuity of like my values, my purpose, and my passion. And it's in the inclusion and diversity space, either as a speaker or I'm part of the Illinois Diversity Council. I'm doing other stuff that I'm not necessarily publishing because my actions speak for me. That's not something that I want to broadcast. That's part of my humility. What I'm sharing is more like the inspiring things that that will inspire people to maybe trigger something in them to change their behavior, or give them some advice. So I would say really work-life integration. Um, I'm the type of person, I learned that from my father, that you need to work hard. I think over time I've learned to transform that hard working into smart working.
Hmm.
But again, my father was my best example. In 40 years, he never had one single day of absence at work. He was a carpenter, waking up every single day at 4 in the a.m. And the only time that I saw him that he was late at work was he was like exhausted. And
Hmm.
instead of like travel, he was commuting with colleagues and he was late. So he took his car and was driving like crazy to still be on time at work. That's the only day that I remember because he was like, making a lot of noise around the house. But other than that, he never missed one single day at work. So I would rather say work-life integration, but probably for our audience, I think that work-life balance is important, and I respect that. But it requires each of us to make an effort in that space, particularly for organizations. Having that flexible structure that allows people, to switch off. And if I have to really make a cultural distinction, in Europe, there is that work-life balance, that you like it or not, in terms of when you take vacation, you take vacation. I give an example, like, you will put like, when you turn on your out of office here in the US, the message will invite people to still contact you. In Europe, when you put your out of office, the message tells you, I'm out of the office.
Yeah.
So again, if it's possible in Europe, maybe I can influence over here also people to have that flexibility. But it's a challenge, definitely. But it's not something that is impossible. It just requires like each of us to show the example. Um, because 2 years and a half, the world was shaken upside down, and I think it has really given people the opportunity to review their priorities, to reset the button, and the quality that they want to spend with the quality time they want to spend at work and at home has drastically changed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Um, Yeah, thank you for sharing that about how you connect with people and how you put family first. And yeah, I mean, work-life balance, some people say is a myth, but we always need to strive for some form of balance in our life. I think the word balance means that because they don't weigh the same, they don't weigh equally. You have to just find a way to make sure that you are not ignoring one too much at the expense of the other. So thank you for sharing your own strategies. And I remember you told me like every weekend or most weekends you take a walk by the lake. But you might not know, but that is also finding work-life balance because you're taking away the stress of the work. You're finding time to connect with nature, to meditate and being mindful. These are all tactics and strategies that have been shown that help with well-being as well. It's just a minute to go. And I think I'm just going to ask you one question, even if you just put it as a sentence. So, and that would be, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known for when you leave this world as Khady Gaye?
Oof, my goodness. I,
Difficult question, isn't it?
it's a difficult question, and I say I'm a humble person, so it's difficult to answer that question because who am I to say, hey, this is the legacy that I want to live? People, I rather answer that question in saying that I was calling my post when it comes to DI like my fingerprint, because we all have our fingerprint, something that is
Yeah.
unique to us. And I hope that the footprint that I will leave is, inspiring people that with generosity, with authenticity, you can reach and touch um, a lot of people, and unfold a lot. And the world is large enough for all of us. So I would say, do not retreat on inclusion.
Wow. I think that's where we would end it for today's episode. With authenticity, you can touch a lot of lives, and the world is big enough for all of us. So do not fall back on inclusion. I'm sure you all agree that this is a 1 hour well spent listening to Khady Gaye and learning from Khady Gaye. Thank you to all of you that stayed across, even though we had some technical challenges. Thank you so much. And for those of you that are watching the replay as well, thank you, and be sure to leave comments. We'll always reply to it. And as we always end this episode, till we meet again, make sure you keep living with passion and purpose. See you later.